Hi there, and thank you for joining in today. It's yet another episode, Q1 episode 7, and today we are looking at the topic the problem of evil. You ready? Let's get into it. It was a warm Sunday afternoon in Kot Radha Kishan in Pakistan, November 2014. A young Christian couple, Shahzad Masir and his pregnant wife Shama, they were finishing their work at a local brick kiln where they labored daily under the scorching sun. They were bonded laborers, essentially slaves trapped in the cycle of poverty, working tirelessly to pay off a debt to the employer. Shama was a devoted wife and mother, known for her unwavering faith in God. But in a tragic twist, an unfounded accusation of blasphemy changed their fate. A rumor spread that Shama had burnt the pages of the Quran, a crime punishable by death in their country. The accusation was false, but it was enough. A mob of about 600 to 1,000 enraged people descended upon them. There was no trial, no chance to explain, no mercy. The couple was beaten savagely as the young children watched in terror. Then, in an act of pure evil, they were thrown into the same killing where they worked every day, burnt alive. Their crime? Just being Christians. Their children were orphaned. Their cries were drowned out by the mob's chants. The authorities did nothing until 4 years later. The world watched in horror, yet justice was slow, if it ever came at all. This event shook the Christian community worldwide, raising the haunting question: where was God? Why did He allow this to happen? That's a heavy question, one that has been asked for centuries and yet remains unanswered to many. Makisha, I think we should break it down.
Absolutely. From genocides to child trafficking, from war crimes to personal betrayals, evil often seems to run unchecked in our world. If God truly is loving, all powerful, and deeply invested in us, why does He allow such horror? And more disturbingly, why do the wicked seem to thrive while the righteous suffer? These are the questions we must confront. So let's get into it. Over the past 6 weeks, we've explored the character of God, especially in how He interacts with us. We've discovered that He is loving. His love is not just emotional, but deeply sacrificial, powerful. Nothing is beyond His control. Deeply invested in us, He knows every tear we shed. Wise and just, even when we don't understand His ways. Patient, allowing free will while still working out His perfect plan. Yet, we live in a world where innocent people are burned alive, where children starve, where injustice reigns. How do we reconcile these two realities? Where is God when evil occurs? Why does He sometimes feel distant, even silent? These are the weighty questions we must look to God's own answers rather than relying on human reasoning. And that's exactly what we're going to do. Let's go straight to the source, God Himself. Emeke, will you take us there?
That's the plan. The best person to answer these questions is God Himself. And thankfully, He has already revealed much about the why of evil in our world. To uncover this truth, we'll take a methodical approach using the root cause analysis. It's a technique often used to diagnose complex problems by breaking down the entire system into subsections, examining each part through a series of diagnostic tests, identifying the root cause, isolating it, and working towards a resolution. We would apply this to the problem of evil and suffering, tracing it back to its origins, exposing its true cause, and ultimately revealing the hope that still shines through the darkness because evil does not have the final word. So let's begin. If we distill all the questions we've raised thus far, they crystallize into one monumental, unsettling question, which is if God is perfectly good, why then does evil exist in the world he governs? Now, this question has haunted philosophers, theologians, even everyday people for centuries. It's a question that has caused many to doubt, to wrestle, even walk away from faith. To find a logical and truthful answer, we must go back to the very beginning and examine the possible origins of evil. Where exactly did it come from? Now, following our root cause analysis workflow, there are only two possible sources of the problem. One, the manufacturer, God Himself, the Creator. And two, the product, the creatures. That's where we're coming. For a moment, let's just ignore all other third parties, Satan and his cohorts. Let's focus on these two main possibilities. So, where do we start? Let's begin our vetting process. Let's go straight to the source, God Himself. Makisha, can you help us?
Sounds good to me. Next step, let's begin our vetting process. For the former, the Bible, our reference resource, states very clearly that God is entirely good. There is no darkness or shadow of turning in him. Genesis confirms that when God completed creation, everything was perfect, not a trace of evil, pain, or suffering. He is the very definition of goodness. Moving on to the next subsection, the creatures. The Bible testifies that when God created man, he declared everything he made to be very good. We were made perfect without flaw. But down the line, the Bible changes its testimony, saying, the hearts of men are continually evil. This text already identifies a problem, which brings us to the next question. If we were made perfect from the beginning, as confirmed in Genesis, but now this is who we are, continually evil, what happened? How did we go from being very good to continually evil? Again, Genesis answers. This change began at the entrance of sin, when our first parents, in exercising their free will, chose disobedience, yielding to Satan, meaning, in the exercising of our free will comes the possibility of not choosing right in disobedience like Adam and Eve did, and this amounts to sin. That's a crucial point. So, if God is not the source of evil, then where did things go so wrong? Ameke, you want to walk us through it?
On it. Succinctly put, free will is a gift, but it comes with a risk. The ability to choose means there is a chance not to choose right. Sin is the direct result of the misuse of free will. Adam and Eve chose disobedience, and in so doing, opened the floodgates of sin into the world. Sin, in turn, warped everything. Suffering entered where there was once peace. Injustice reigned where there was once harmony. Evil became a force that thrived in the shadows. The point is, God is not to blame here for the existence of evil in our world. It is a direct consequence of the entrance of sin, which is made possible by the abuse of the gift of free will. And here is the chilling reality. The same choice that Adam and Eve made thousands of years ago, guess what? We're still making those choices today, every single day, all around us. Now we know the whys for its existence, but why allow it to continue? That's the real question, right? If God is all powerful and deeply invested in us, why doesn't He just stop it? Why is God, what is He exactly doing about the whole thing? That's a good question. But I'm going to have to hold on to this one until next week. So please do well to sign in. Moving on, you are probably wondering, so why give us a gift that has such a potential to cause so much evil and pain in our world? Wouldn't it be better if he had simply removed our ability to choose wrong? That's a good question. Please follow me. Makisha, take it away.
Let's go back to one of the darkest days in modern history, September 11, 2001. Ring a bell? On that day, terrorists hijacked passenger planes, planes meant for travel, for exploration, for reuniting loved ones, and turned them into weapons of mass destruction, crashing into the Twin Trade Tower, killing thousands and ruining homes. It was a day of unimaginable horror. Still is. Question is, should we ban passenger planes? Or better still, should we conclude that aeroplanes, especially passenger planes, are bad and not to be used? Of course not. Planes are not the problem. In fact, they have revolutionized our world. What once took months by sea now take mere hours. They connect nations, cultures, and families. The problem was not the planes, it was their abuse. In like manner, the problem here is not in the gift of free will, but the abuse of it. On top of that, without the ability to freely choose or make decisions, we will be like robots, incapable of giving or receiving love. Our allegiance to God will be forced, programmed, not willingly given, and since God does not accept compelled worship, it makes perfect sense that He has given us free will. So, to answer the first question, regardless of whether it is perpetrated by Satan, his agencies, or natural causes, evil is a direct consequence of the entrance of sin to our world, a direct consequence of the abuse of the gift of free will. God is not to blame. That's a powerful analogy. It shows that the problem isn't with free will itself, but how it's used. Emeke, let's talk about navigating through the chaos.
Sure. So now we understand how evil entered our world and what God is doing to fix it. But here's the thing, evil still exists, pain is still real, and we still have to live through it every single day. The big question is how? How do we navigate through it? Knowing the what behind suffering is one thing, but without clarity on the why, life can feel sometimes unbearable, even unfair. And sometimes we are left in the dark wondering, does God even see what is happening? Why does He seem silent? Has He abandoned us? But guess what? We are not alone in this series of why questions. For instance, the likes of Job, Jeremiah, Malachi, even the psalmists, they all reiterated same concerns in the quest to understand why. Guess who else walked in those shoes? Jesus himself. However, we catch some clues on some behind the scene details that could help us navigate through these anomalies of life and the details of his experience. as he navigated through the cross. Now, while on the cross, bearing the weight of the sins of the entire world, at some point, even he felt a disconnection from the Father as he groaned bitterly, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Now, fast forward to the 21st century. Now, in retrospect, we know that while the world thought God was silent, he was actually solving the sin problem. What looked like defeat was actually a victory in progress. The cross was not an end of the story. It was instead the start, the beginning of a new chapter. Because of that sacrifice that at the time looked like doom and gloom, Satan, the root of all evil, was defeated. Sin and suffering were both given an expiration date. God secured a future where pain, death, and sorrow will cease to exist. And for Jesus, in the midst of the pain and misery, compounded by what felt like a separation from the Father, and the long silence following his question, Jesus stayed the course. While not denying the reality of his feelings, he trusted the process and looked forward to a hope beyond the immediate suffering. Point is, 1. There is a lot of evil and injustice that defy reason in our world today. Number 2, we might not always be able to understand all the whys behind the words. Number 3, it doesn't make it easier not having clarity most of the time. And the worst part, when God is silent. I don't know about you, but it really hurts. Here's the truth. Our inability to find answers to our questions does not mean there are no good answers. We just don't know them yet. The fact that we do not understand everything does not mean that God is not working out something. We just don't see it yet. So, to throw more light on possible reasons for the whys behind the whats, and hopefully find some answers, or at least hope, to carry us through those dark moments, we will be exploring 1, a case study, and 2, a school of thought. Makisha, the mic is yours.
Let's take a closer look at one of the greatest mysteries of suffering, Job. Imagine this. You walk into a hospital room, a man sits there completely broken. He was once rich, now he's penniless. He was once healthy, now his body is covered in boils. He had a beautiful family, now they're all dead. This man is Job, and now you have to comfort him. What do you say? How do you explain why this is happening? Because on the surface, it makes no sense. He was a good man, so why was he suffering? Surely there were wicked people in his town. Why were they spared? If we're being honest, we wouldn't have had an answer. Neither did Job. So he did the only thing that made sense. He asked God directly. And when God finally answered, his response was unexpected. Let's just say his response was interesting. Instead of explaining the why behind Job's suffering, God asked him a question. Why do you talk so much when you know so little? Ouch. But here's what God was really saying. Job, what you see is not all there is to know. There's a much bigger picture you cannot comprehend. In other words, the fact that we don't understand something doesn't mean there's no reason behind it. One day, everything will make sense. But for now, we must trust God's wisdom, just like Jesus did, and Brother Job too. Not because it's easy, but because God has proven He is good, even when life doesn't make sense. That's a humbling reality. We don't always get the answers we want, but that doesn't mean there are no answers. Amaka, what's the bigger picture here?
Now let's take this a step further. There is a philosophical perspective called skeptical theism. It is based on Isaiah 55, verse 8 to 9, and it reads, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, nor are your ways my ways, says the Lord." In simple terms, God's plan is so much bigger than what we can see. It is not just about Earth, it's about the entire universe, history, and eternity. We do not have the full picture, so we should not assume that just because we do not see God's reasons, that He has not. Think of it this way. Imagine a toddler at a doctor's office. The child is crying, terrified of the needle. It makes no sense to them. But the doctor and the parents, they know that the pain has a purpose. The child does not understand now, but one day they will. And just like that child, we can struggle to understand what God is doing, but one day we will. Now that we have walked through all of this, the choice is ours. We can either choose to get stuck in the pain of the unknown, or we can trust the one who knows and sees the full picture. One day, all our questions will be answered. But until then, we walk by faith. Because even when God is silent, He is never absent. And that's exactly why we must stay the course. Makisha, take it home.
And that's it for this week, folks. Next week, we'll dive into the topic free will and divine providence. You don't want to miss it. Until then, stay the course. I remain your Sabbath School Doodle, doodling out. Let's make it make sense. If you were blessed by this session, be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you'll be notified as soon as we publish. And if you haven't given your life to Christ, you should while you still can. I'll see you next week, God willing.